And we are back for this segment of Green and Gold now, week 1 at the Bears, after talking to rightly the football expert, the Bears fan. I know, Packers fans, it sucks we had to have a Bears fan on. But yeah, so we talked with you a few days ago about this season, but now we're talking about week 1, the 207th matchup. As I mentioned earlier, we will be live for that game on Sorgy Stories this Sunday, 4:20 p.m. Eastern, 3:20 Central for everyone back home in Wisconsin. This is going to be a really interesting game.
It's always ridiculously interesting at the beginning of the season, and I touched on this in a previous video, that when you start the year, especially in the era of preseason where starters play so little, you don't know what you have. I mean, the voice of the Green Bay Packers on radio, Wayne Larrivee, would always tell me this when I worked with him at WTMJ in Milwaukee. He always said, you don't know what you have the first few weeks. The teams that can win games when they really are still trying to figure out who they are the teams that put themselves in position early on to win division championships, to get playoff spots, to compete for home field advantage. This year, those things, I think, are out of the way of the Green Bay Packers, unless somehow they get off to a ridiculously hot start. But it's this unknown factor that makes these September games so wild sometimes.
Yeah.
And especially with a team where you have a new starting quarterback, only the third regular starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers in 31 years.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Grassi said it perfectly. He said, in my entire life, this is only the third time that I've had a new starting quarterback in September.
Exactly. And you add that to 7 other new starters for the Green Bay Packers, which is a pretty large load of newcomers in the starting lineup. This is a team in transition. This is the first time I've gone into a Green Bay Packers season not expecting this team to really do much in the last 30 seasons because they're rebuilding. This is a rebuild of a team. It's what happens when you have to say goodbye to an all-time top 5 quarterback in the history of the NFL and Aaron Rodgers, and you have to reset yourself. This game is so much a factor of the unknowns.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same way with Chicago, too.
Yeah, I'd agree there. I think the only difference between these two teams is that Chicago is 1 year ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Chicago, I'm going to pull up their depth chart here, if I can grab this. So the Bears, obviously the quarterback, Justin Fields, who led NFL quarterbacks in rushing yards. He was top 10 among all NFL players in rushing yards last year. If that tells you anything about how much this dude loves to run, and he can pass the ball too. And I mean, you look at this Bears team you're talking about, Fields, as we mentioned, Khalil Herbert, not a bad running back at all. And then they, with that, have the best receiving core in the division. DJ Moore, who they got in that trade that Reichley and I talked about earlier involving the number 1 pick. And then the guy they drafted, Darnell Mooney, and they traded last year at the deadline, I want to say, for Chase Claypool, who is a really, really good receiver. Obviously, the tight end core is pretty strong with Cole Kmet, Bobby Tunyon, and Mercedes Lewis, as they just took the Packers' old tight end core. And, I mean, they have a pretty question mark offensive line. They spent a whole lot of money on Nate Davis, the right guard, who was with the Titans previously. But this defense for the Bears also improved. Yannick Ngakoue, who we saw play incredibly well with the Jaguars a few years ago. And then you look at the pickup from the Eagles, TJ Edwards.
Yep.
Obviously, he didn't play great in the Super Bowl, but overall, a really good linebacker. And then I'd call it the biggest pickup, Tremaine Edmonds, the Pro Bowl linebacker that the Bills previously had. They spent a lot of money, and they're trying to get to the playoffs, possibly winning the division. I mean, you can see 10 wins from this Bears team because, as I said, they're a year ahead of the Packers.
The development of this squad, as you shared, is what I think puts Chicago over the top in this game. They are finally giving Justin Fields pieces. He's still going to be running for his life in a lot of situations because the Bears' offensive line is still not as strong as it needs to be to allow him the time to really utilize his talents the best way that he can.
It's aging. It's young.
Exactly. But he's got weapons now that he can throw to.
Yeah.
That's going to improve his productivity in the passing game. That defense, especially against a Packers offense that's trying to figure out who they are, that is not going to be as strong in the passing game. If they're the kind of defense that can fly to the football, they're going to really cause problems for Green Bay's otherwise very strong running game.
And the good news for the Packers, rightfully said it earlier, the Bears don't have the good run defense.
Right.
And that is great for us because we can take advantage of that, and you're going to see a lot of ground and pound from Aaron Jones, but even more than Aaron Jones possibly. I mean, we'll see how much Jones is in the passing game compared to the running game. A.J. Dillon in his prove-it year for the Packers. And I didn't mention this earlier, but I will say there's a reason Matt LaFleur started the starters in week 3 of the preseason. And that's because the Packers, he doesn't want this team to have week 1 fever like they've had the last couple years, which has really hurt them. He wants them to hit the ground running and play well in this game and after playing together as a core in the preseason. And, I mean, you look at this Packers team, the receivers, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, going up against, you're going to have Kyler Gordon and Jalen Johnson. I mean, they can take advantage of that.
You use the phrase, hit the ground running. They literally need to in this game. Establish the run. Get that umbrella of the 4-3 defense of the Bears closer to the line of scrimmage. The more that you do that, the more you're going to get one-on-one opportunities for those wide receivers who have game-breaking speed. That is what's going to give Jordan Love comfort in the pass pocket.
Yeah.
Is if he can get the running game going and then get the big play action passing game. It's in play action that they're going to be able to get some big plays.
And that's going to come with Christian Watson, who his longest catch came from, guess who? Jordan Love in that Eagles game, the 63-yard touchdown. Romeo Doubs is more of a short pass threat, but also you look at who I was kind of surprised to see this, the number 3 wide receiver of this team who played a little bit. Aaron Rodgers seemed to like him. Samori Toure, the young kid out of Nebraska, who, I mean, he can play. And then obviously the rookies, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, and the undrafted rookie, Malik Heath. You can see all of them as well. And then you talk about the tight ends, Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft, both rookies, Musgrave and Love. They've been a duo. I mean, they've known each other for a long time. They have good chemistry. And also Josiah DeGuara, who was drafted along with Jordan Love. Love likes passing to him. We'll see him probably more in the blocking game. But, I mean, this Packers team, especially with a healthy David Bakhtiari, a healthy Elgton Jenkins, and you have Zach Tom there, who's a decent player. Question marks in Josh Myers at centers after a bad snap or two in the preseason, and John Runyon at guard. But the O-line isn't bad.
That O-line is going to have to dominate on first and second down.
Yeah.
Because they've got to run the ball on those downs effectively. You do that, you gain first downs on second down, you put Jordan Love into third and short situations when he can really utilize play action. And also on first and second down as well. That's going to be the key in this game. Because if you put essentially a rookie quarterback in a lot of third and longs against this Bears defense, and I know that's a general statement with pro football that you've got to avoid third and long, but it's especially important in this kind of a setting with a quarterback where the offense is now his for the first time in his life. In a rivalry game on the road, you've got to win on first and second down with this offensive line, and they can.
Yeah, and then I have to talk about the defense. I didn't get to talk about this much earlier directly, but the defense, when you look at this team, the side of the ball, Kenny Clark, Preston Smith, Devondre Campbell, Rashawn Gary, Jair Alexander, Rasul Douglas. That 6, those are the proven guys. And you would expect this defense to be good when you hear those names. But last year they weren't, and that's not the fault of the players. more than anything, that's on Joe Barry.
That's going to be the key for the Packers if they expect to have any success this year. Joe Barry has to get his ass together as a defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
He's got to use the talent that's available to him to their best capability, put them in position with schemes to make plays and make smarter decisions as a defensive coordinator. This core of the Packers defense has the capability to be a top 10 defense in this league.
Set it out.
And if the Packers want to get anywhere, they have to be this year.
And I mean, if they play as well as they did in the last few games of last season, they can do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they play great defense. I will say, I'll talk before I get to the rookies and the new additions defensively. Devontae Wyatt, Quay Walker, Eric Stokes, Darnell Savage, Rudy Ford. Those are the 5 that are really, they need to prove themselves this season. Eric Stokes, I think, is going to be starting the year off injured, which he's dealt with a lot, but he has blazing speed. He can keep up with anyone in this league. And then also I said I'd talk about the new guys, I guess you could say, the draft picks, Lucas Van Ness and Carrington Valentine. Valentine, a late round pick, but I mean, there's a lot of hype around him coming out of the preseason. He played phenomenal. And then you look at the safeties, Jonathan Owens and Tarvarius Moore, both free agent signings. We'll see what we get out of them as well. I was kind of surprised to see Rudy Ford put on the depth chart above Jonathan Owens, but that's a guy that I think, I mean, same with Tarvarius Moore. I think they can both play well and step up.
That defense excelling and the running game excelling is going to be the key to the season. And you're going to see a Packers team that is going to have to play a very traditional style of ground and pound, let your defense do the work, and don't depend on the quarterback position to get you victory. Yeah. The Green Bay Packers haven't had that kind of an offense and been successful in 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a throwback.
Yeah.
This is going to be a throwback kind of team if you expect them to go anywhere.
And then the last thing I'll say, Rich Bisaccia, the special teams coordinator, brand new kicker, brand new punter, brand new long snapper. Obviously, one of my favorite Packers, Keyshawn Nixon, is the returner. Super happy to have him back with how good he is. But I'm trusting in Rich. I don't understand some of the cuts we made at those positions. If Mason Crosby wants to come back, if Anders Carlson isn't playing well, then, I mean, he can. That's fine with me. But I expect the special teams to be pretty good as well.
They could give the Packers victories in games that you wouldn't necessarily expect to win.
Yeah.
Because those are the field flippers.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kind of guys that can either produce a massive return that puts you in position for a score, or you get a score off the return, or someone on the special teams makes a hit that causes a fumble that puts Green Bay in position to score a touchdown that they otherwise wouldn't.
Yep.
These are the guys that could be the surprise that puts Green Bay in position to win some games.
Yeah. So we'll wrap it up here. The spread, Bears favored by 1. As you heard me earlier, folks, I said 27-24 Bears. What's your pick?
I think this kind of a game is going to be one where Green Bay is going to try and limit the number of possessions that Justin Fields has. Don't give him the football too many times. Run the ball, create a lot of long drives, and do your dangest to get that defense off the field. It's going to be successful to a point. I don't expect it to be as successful enough for Green Bay to win this game. I'm thinking 20-17 Bears.
I like it. So we both agree that the Packers cover,
mm-hmm.
and the Bears will cover.
Right.
My bad.
Right.
The Bears cover, but it's close.
Yes.
I mean, -1 feels pretty close compared to what I would expect it to be. So you don't see much offense in this game, though.
Not at all. Not at all. I think you shrink the number of possessions in this game, which is what gives Green Bay a chance. I don't think it's going to be enough, but I don't think they're going to play horrifically. I think they're going to make Packers fans proud and realize there's something there with this team, but they need to grow.
Next, I will be joined by American Football Network to talk about this big matchup. But we will see you next week for the Falcons episode. as the Packers will be heading down to the ATL for a September matchup.
And that game that they're going to play on Sunday.
Yes,
I'll be around for that.
yeah. We will both see you then for that, as the TV that you're seeing right now is what we'll be watching the game on.
Yep.
So yeah. See you next week.
You got it.
Okay.